What's up, everybody, and welcome to the Golf 360 podcast. I'm the host, Pete Popovich. So you may be asking yourself, what is Golf 360? And Golf 360 is a show that was designed to introduce you to people associated with the game of golf to help you improve not only at your game, but also your life. Almost all of our guests are from within the industry in some way, shape, or form, but some of the guests we have are from outside the industry, and it mainly revolves around the business world with a few others scattered in here and there. Now, all of the guests that we have a few things in common. One, they all were highly successful and accomplished in their field. Two, each has something to pass along that will help you in your game and your life. And three, they were all more than willing to give back by passing along the things that they use to help them in their career, and even some of the mistakes that they made so that others don't make them in their journey. So I hope you find listening to them as enjoyable as I did interviewing them, and that each and every one of you benefits from the information that they so willingly and graciously pass along. This podcast is brought to you in part by Just Thrive Probiotic. You may be surprised to learn that your digestive system is the key to creating and maintaining the quality of your physical, mental, and emotional health, and it's one of the body's most essential systems. That's why the majority of nutritionists today highly recommend probiotics as an indispensable nutritional supplement. As a discriminating consumer, you've probably been searching for a probiotic that is proven, potent, and effective, and you found it. Just Thrive is your best choice for maintaining a healthy lifestyle. Just Thrive Probiotic captures the power of hundreds of thousands of years of nature's design with a specialized bacillus strain formulation that guarantees survivability through the stomach and upper digestive system. Supports optimum gut health, digestive health, immune health, and delivers antioxidants. Great for adults, kids, and the whole family. Use promo code GOLF360 at www.thriveprobiotic.com for 10% off your order. This podcast is brought to you in part by Old South Golf Links. A short ride across a bridge from Hilton Head Island is one of the area's finest golf courses and a hidden treasure. Set up on towering pines and ancient oaks with sweeping marsh vistas, truly makes Old South Golf Links a one-of-a-kind golfing experience. The Clyde Johnson design was named one of the top 10 new public courses when it opened, and it also takes full advantage of the natural beauty of the Low Country. Old South is a fun and unique challenge for golfers of every skill level and a favorite of both locals and visitors. Whether it's your first time here or you're a regular, you'll be treated and feel like family. From the bag drop to check-in at the fully stocked pro shop with both men's and women's apparel, to breakfast or lunch before or after your round, the staff is always ready and willing to help. Experience for yourself why Old South is one of the premier golf courses in the Hilton Head area and why it will quickly become a favorite of yours too. Visit them in person or online at www.oldsouthgolf.com, or to make it tee time, simply call the pro shop at 843-785-5353. Hey, what's up, all you hackers and choppers out there? Got a very, very cool show for you today, and it's because what today's guest goes over and is an expert at is something that every golfer in the world has struggled with at one time or another. And that is how to make a swing change stick and how to take your driving range game to the golf course. Because all of us have spent an inordinate amount of time working on our game, honing it in on the range. We think we got it all set to go. We go to the golf course that afternoon or the next day, and we absolutely hit it sideways. Can't even keep it on the map. And it is one of the most frustrating things that golfers deal with. Iain Highfield and his program called Game Like Training have come up with a program that addresses just that. I met Iain a number of years ago at the IJGA Hank Haney Academy here in Bluffton, South Carolina. And then we reconnected at Coach Camp last year where Iain was a presenter. And I had to buy his book. It's called Golf Practice. And you can get it on Amazon. I'll have it linked in the description below. And it really focuses on how to take your practice and your range game to the golf course and make your swing changes stick. So Iain's a great guy that you're really going to pick up on that in this interview today. And you're really going to learn a lot. I know I did. I have a number of students who have implemented these principles and are already seeing gains already. And he is helping golfers all across the spectrum. And if you haven't heard of him yet, you're going to soon, because he is making some waves and some big waves in the golf instructional industry. So sit back, relax, enjoy, and please give a big Golf 360 welcome to Iain Highfield and his program, Game Like Training. All right, I'm here with Iain Highfield of Game Like Training. It's great to have you on, Iain. Thanks for coming on and making the time.
No worries, man. We've tried to connect a couple of times. I'm glad we finally made it happen.
Yeah, and with a guy who's as in demand and as busy as you are, I'm very, very fortunate and happy that you made time to come on my show.
No, they're kind words. I don't know how truthful they are, but they're very kind words.
Hey, have you been just real quick? And I asked John Sinclair this last week when he came on. You been watching any of The Last Dance, the Michael Jordan documentary?
I haven't started it yet. No.
All right, then I won't ruin it for you. I don't. It's been great though.
I followed some of it on social media, so I understand bits of it, and obviously I've read about Jordan and seen bits before. But it's definitely on my list to catch up on. It's how can I not, right? It's a must.
Well, the reason I ask it, and for those of you who don't understand what you do and the books you've written and everything else, and really what they captured very well in that whole thing, and you would already know this, so I'm not going to do any spoilers for you, is his mental game and the way that he prepared and practiced was so, elite and high level, and it's like nobody else, maybe somebody did it, but it never translated into the success he had. So that was one of the reasons I asked.
Yeah, I've actually the unfortunate passing of Kobe sparked off a ton of quotes, and you would see quotes like, my teammates hated me because in practice I was all elbows. I would foul. I would work 10 times harder than I did in a game. And he said, and the reason was my teammates hated me, but actually when the world championship game went to the 7th game, that's when we triumphed. That's when we prospered. And that's when my teammates realized that was the moment I was preparing them for.
Mm-hmm.
So, I've seen those quotes, and I've seen very, very, very similar quotes from Jordan. The one about the Detroit Pistons, if you watch that documentary, about Bill Laimbeer, I think his name is, and Dennis Rodman and Isaiah Thomas. And, I didn't know any of this 6 years ago when I came from England. I just started to consume all this because I found it so engrossing. But if you watch that documentary, debatably the Detroit Pistons kind of made Michael Jordan because he was being bullied by him. He couldn't cope with them physically. And in that off season, he went and completely revolutionized his body and the way he played. I don't know if they touch on that in this documentary.
Yeah, there's a whole episode, I think almost 1.5, that in the early sections of it. I don't know if it was episode 3 and 4. I can't remember. But yeah, they definitely, because that was such a big part of his development, as you say.
Yeah, and I watched that, and I thought the Detroit Pistons were amazing, the way that they came across. Isaiah Thomas was another one who's kind of a little crazy, right? He came across as a bit crazy in that documentary, and Jordan comes across almost as a little crazy in certain things. And I think a lot of them are. It goes from a passion and developing skill to almost an obsession. Tiger Woods, Jordan, Serena Williams, the list just goes on and on of these unbelievable achievers in athletics and in sport. But definitely a common trait in all of them is how they deal with adversity, how they adapt, and that definitely comes down to how they practice. There's a huge, they say success leaves clues.
Mm-hmm.
I think, how these elite practice and push themselves and adapt and deal with adversity, it actually leaves clues for a lot of people as to why they're not playing the golf maybe that they desire.
Do you think for the elites that it becomes an addiction to winning?
I don't know if it becomes an addiction to winning. I think the addiction potentially lies elsewhere. I think the winning is part of it, but it's just part of a process, I think. And look, you're speaking to someone whose highest golf achievement was, I think I won a medal where I shot 1 under par once, right, at my local club. The last time I really achieved anything in the sporting world was when I played rugby at about 17 or 18. And I'm coming more from the standpoint of studying human performance, studying how humans learn, studying elite behavior, being in and around people who've achieved, debatably greatness. And I think with Tiger Woods, he got critiqued when he changes his swing. Luke Donald, there was debate, should he have ever tried to hit it further? I almost feel like that's what they're addicted to. They're addicted to the constant self-improvement. And they're addicted to wanting to compete at the highest level. I think all of them know that they can't control winning. If Tiger Woods hadn't have won the Masters, what would the outcome have been? There was actual discussions of, hey, can Tiger win? He was choking a bit down the stretch in this tournament and this tournament, which is complete garbage, right? But I don't know if Tiger is addicted to winning or he's addicted to the processes of constant self-improvement, because that's really where the fulfillment lies. The external gratification and the fame and the fortune, I guess, in some ways comes from winning. But the real gratification comes from that desire to be the best that you can ever be. Leave nothing on the table. Jordan, every practice left nothing on the table. Kobe, every practice leaves nothing on the table. Tiger's golf career is going to leave nothing. He's going to have done everything he possibly can to be the best that he can be. Is he chasing Nicklaus's record? Personally, I don't think so. I don't know Tiger Woods, and I don't really know that many people who are close to him. And I think even if you do know people who are close to him, you shouldn't ask them Tiger Woods questions either. So this is all like hearsay. But I would say he's addicted to the process of constant self-improvement rather than addicted to winning. Winning just comes as a byproduct of that, I believe.
Let me ask you one question, and I don't want to get too far off track because I want to get into what exact game-like training is for, again, people who might not know.
Oh no, let's get off track. It's way better off track.
So, Brandel Chambly, who's obviously he's somewhat polarizing. Either like him or you love him. And I listened to one of his episodes of his podcast, he and Jamie Diaz, and I think they do a very good job on their show. So, Brandel is what he is, and I think he's good for the game, and that he's not cookie cutter. I thought Johnny Miller was good for the game. Like in other sports, Dick Vitale, I think, was good for the game. You can't have the same thing over and over. You have to have people who are the Mavericks a little bit. But Brandel on one of his podcasts had said that it's not just talent, inborn talent that makes the greatest who they are. It's a development of that talent. And he gave the example of, I think it was a Japanese professor who took 10 or 20 kids, and he, over the course of their young life, as they grew to adults, had trained them in, I think it was classical music, and all of them turned into world-class, whether it's pianists or cellists or what have you. And I can see what he's saying where you could do that, but you look at somebody like a Tiger Woods or a Michael Jordan, and obviously their brain and how they go about it, as you mentioned, is such a vital and important role, and it separates them when you get to the best of the best. But I couldn't be an NBA player. I'm 6'4", 6'5". I couldn't be an NBA player. I'm not big enough. I'm not fast enough. I'm not. Tiger has certain skills where he swings extremely fast. He's always been extremely flexible. But from your perspective, is Brandel onto something where these people or these kids can train to where they do develop genius, or is it innate? Is it what is it that you see? Because you work with a lot of kids and you work with a lot of great players.
Yeah, so it's a great question. I could take this a lot of ways. First of all, I think Brandel Chambly He's very articulate. He's very, very, very well read.
Mm-hmm.
He's very, very smart. The only problem that Brando has is he gets asked questions because he's so much in the public eye and he's on air for so long and he's got so many handles that he's attached to. He'll have to answer questions where he's not necessarily an expert. There's that saying that little knowledge is a dangerous thing. And sometimes that might show up with Brando, like when he talks about golf practice or talks about the yips. He's been off the mark in some of those things, I believe. But in this instance, I believe there's a validity in what he's saying. I'm kind of familiar with the study. And what they would call it is they would call it like a talent hotbed. So if you read a book by a guy called Matthew Said, he wrote a book called Bounce. It was one of the first performance books I read, probably 12 years ago, and was a big catalyst for me evolving my coaching philosophy. And he played table tennis for Great Britain. And so did a number of other people on his street. Just randomly in the north of England or wherever it was, they churned out these table tennis players. And his philosophy was they had a youth club or a table tennis center, and it was open 24 hours. So the kids went there and they got quite innovative and creative with how they would train. So he talks a lot about the environmental factors and being surrounded by certain people and having access to certain things that can create what's called a talent hotbed. And look, I haven't done that story justice at all. Another example that I've read, and I don't know if this came from Matthew Said, was the French lady who won Wimbledon. She wasn't from an affluent background, and she wasn't training in a tennis center that was luxurious. It had a hole in the roof, and it used to leak, and the water then used to freeze, and parts of the tennis court were ice. But she would still go practice. So she learned to return serve basically on ice. And if you watch when she wins Wimbledon, everyone's serving at her and they can't deal with the return. Just breaking serve right, left and center. Again, because of the environmental factors that were at play. So I believe, one more good example, every single 100-meter champion in the Olympics for the last, I don't know, I can't get this right, maybe 6 or 7 or 8 sprinters has an older sibling. Generally, the youngest of 3 or the third of 4. So that were sprinters as well. So they get to see what's happening before them and they can strive towards that and they compete, and sibling rivalry on the track fuels this competitiveness. And there is a lot of study and research about the second-born and third-born always being a better athlete than the first-born. So I'm a huge believer that the environment, you are blessed with a gift, and it's a gift of physical and mental adaptability. And if you are placed in an environment that pulls you out of your homeostasis, that pulls you out of your comfort zone, and you see all these things going on around you, you will adapt to that environment. So you said, I'm 6'4", I'm never going to be a basketballer. But potentially, if, let's just say randomly, you were born into a different family or you were adopted into a different family where dad was a college basketball coach and brother was recruited to play at this level, and you were 5 years younger than him and you were watching him and he could jump high but you wanted to jump higher, those skills can evolve. Mm-hmm. I think your genetics absolutely play a role. They do. They play a role. But if you think about it like this, and this comes from a book called Talent Code or Bounce, if you have the greatest ingredients for a cake, so let's say you go to Whole Foods and you buy the most amazing ingredients. And let's say I go to Walmart and go to the discount aisle and I buy crappy ingredients. We get into the kitchen and your oven is broken and mine works, whose cake's going to be the best?
Right.
Mine, right? Because
Yep.
the environment. So the environment is crucial, absolutely crucial. Ricky Fowler can play in the wind and hit some freaking amazing shots because he grew up in the wind. You know, you just adapted to it. If you've never faced wind, when I took a young kid from Mexico, great player, I took him to the British boys, and he's like, when are they going to call it? And I'm like, call what? And he's like, call the practice round. This kid's getting blown up. I'm like, dude, this is like 25 miles an hour. You got to be looking at the golfing gods and thanking them for this wind. You know, and it was all over the place. He still ground it out, and he made the match play, but he wasn't himself. So that cake analogy, I think, is a very, very good way of looking at nurture versus nature and all of these things. So long-winded answer to go back, I'm in agreement with what Brandel is leaning towards and hinting at there. I think that it takes more. And I feel sorry for society almost when we look at Michael Jordan and we call him genetically gifted, or we look at, LeBron James and call him genetically gifted. If you listen to LeBron James on a podcast where he talks about what he does for recovery and how much he spends every year
amazing,
prolonging his career,
it's amazing.
It's mind-blowing. The guy is an absolute living legend. You know, all of these guys, they take things to a different level. I think the money then obviously helps. He's spending probably 10 times more on recovery a year than I'm making a year. So he's going to have better facilities, access to better facilities and minds than me. But, you know, there's just something different about these guys. And I think the environment that they're, you know, if you take some of them are born into absolute poverty. Some of these guys are born into absolute poverty, and their way out is maybe a criminal way, maybe through music, or maybe through sport. That's what they see. And if you know the story of Richard Sherman, I think Richard Sherman gets a bit of a bad rap for sometimes what people say about him. If you truly know Richard Sherman's story and what he was born into, and the motivation to then go to an Ivy League school and play football and be a student at the level that he is, he was born into a terrible environment, but it obviously created this insane motivation to get out of it. And I think when you work as hard as Richard Sherman and you do what Richard Sherman's done, that emotion comes out sometimes on the field. And I think that that's fully acceptable, because if you understood the environments that he was exposed to, you would understand why he talks like he does and how the emotion comes out. Because what he's achieved is phenomenal. So yeah, I'm a big believer in the power of the environment.
You know, on the somewhat of the other end of that argument, if we go back to the Brandel thing, and I think I remember when we talked. You've read the book Range by David Epstein, haven't you?
Yeah.
It seems like it's almost everyone's read it.
Is it the one about being a generalist versus?
Yes.
Yeah.
Especially, okay, yeah. And there was the one story about the guy who was, I think, the like one of the world record holders or something like that in the high jump, and he was at some college training, and one of the guys in the basketball team almost made the world record, and he had never trained for it.
Yeah.
Just see, I can do that. Let me try it, and then boom, he does it. So, you know, there's from the coaching side that there is so much in the last 10 years or so that technology and everything else has brought to the game on the ability to measure. And I think we're entering into a new era where, okay, everyone was kind of blown away by that, but it's somewhat, the novelty of that has somewhat diminished. But I think what everyone's finding is that all this measurement goes back to what most everybody knew in the beginning, is that, okay, everybody is different. You can't say that this person just needs this and this. It's like, okay, everyone's individual. Their recipe varies. Going back to your cake analogy, right? This guy might need a pinch. This person might need a cup, to use a recipe analogy. And I think as coaches, yourself, myself, and most out there, it's what is going to separate the coaches is, okay, utilizing that technology and then understanding just how much to give that person and then at the right time.
Absolutely. And going back to the high jumper, you are correct. There's a physical gift there, or a physical skill that's been evolved. So this basketballer clearly can leave the floor with force, right? That's how he jumps. Now, what he's done is actually just as mentally demanding as physically demanding, because the physical skill is there to jump and dunk the basketball, and the physical skill is there to then jump over this pole. So he has a what we would call a generalized motor program. Just a motor program is how we move, and he has a generalized motor program that allows him to jump and dunk a basketball. All then he has done is adapted that generalized motor program through his brain and put it into the high jump. So yes, there is physical gifts there, but there's also a very, very high ability to process and chunk information and adapt. So that's as much of a mental ability that is evolved as it is a physical ability, because the skills aren't actually that far apart, are they? Leaving the floor with force, leaving the floor with, and you just see this in golf. You get a baseballer who comes to golf, I think they would struggle to get onto the front foot, because in baseball, you stay on the back foot, right, when you hit. So you see the general motor program for one sport. Does it cross over? Do they have the mental ability to adapt, or is there no correlation between the two and they don't have the mental ability to adapt? So yeah, I agree, but I also think there's a lot of psychology in that ability as well.
So as we're getting into that, and people, we tuned in to listen to what GLT is in golf and this, and here we are talking basketball and other sports.
No, this is way cooler.
So tell everybody who might not be listening what GLT is and why golfers should want to know more.
Yeah, so game-like training is basically, I think the world of golf, there is a pandemic, if you like, for not for want of a better word at this time, where how do I take my range game to the course? How do I make a swing change stick? Like, skill transfer and skill retention is low in golf. So in game-like training, what we're trying to do, we're trying to teach you to train in a certain way and think in a certain way that will help you get your swing change to stick and will help you get your best ball striking to transfer to the course. And often the way to do that, I've talked about the environment being a great teacher. The way to do that is set up games that will challenge your technical movements and make you think and change your golf swing, or games that will put you under stress and force you to relax and adapt to the rules of the game. So the first one of those leads to skill retention, helping you make your swing change stick. The second one of those leads to skill transfer, helping you take your range game to the course. And at heart, I'm a nerd when it comes to human learning and human performance. I'm a complete sports junkie, including golf. And all I've really done, there's no reinventing the wheel. I've just taken the academia of human learning and human performance, read it, struggled to understand it, visited professors and asked them questions, and just built a coaching framework that's a little bit more in line with how we learn, because muscle memory doesn't exist, and just repping ball after ball after ball is not going to get you to make a swing change. So we just educate people in that, inspire them to try and change their habits, and then get them to practically apply it through our coaching. And we write a lot of practice programs, actually. We collaborate with a lot of good coaches, and we write practice programs for their players.
How does what you do, because it is based in psychology, I would assume, is that fair to say, or am I off base?
Psychology and motor learning, but yeah, correct.
So,
Yeah,
so
they
how
kind of
would
go hand in hand.
so it would be along those lines, and for somebody who might call you up or might maybe a naysayer say, well, you're not a psychologist, but I don't think you have to necessarily be a psychologist to be able to understand the principles of what they use and then transfer it into the golf to help somebody, which I think is what you
Yeah,
do.
yeah. First of all, I'm definitely not a psychologist. They're extremely highly well-educated guys who've spent a lot of money to call themselves doctor. So really, a sports psychologist is actually, Doctor So and So, because they spent a lot of time going through academia and published clinical trials, or published papers, research papers that have been peer reviewed and being like, yep, this is it, this is good, congratulations, here's your doctorate. I've never been down that road. So I would never call myself a sports psychologist. I would say that I was a performance coach that just has a basic understanding of sports psychology from, a base level degree that I achieved. And then from then on, an obsession to try and learn these things as much as I can about human performance and how humans learn. And I apply them into practical frameworks. So I take that academia and I make it practical. So Stuart Morgan is a great friend of mine, top coach. He'd be a great guest on the podcast.
Mm-hmm.
He often refers to us as pracademics, taking the academia that these scientists and researchers, breaking it down and make it practical, applicable for the end user, for the player. So ultimately then the player cannot waste time. If you're just hitting balls on the range, ball after ball after ball, you are wasting time. It's a scientific fact. The golf range is not representative of the environment that golf's played in. So hitting ball after ball after ball on the range is like trying to learn to swim in the bath. You're going to be successful because you can't drown in the bath, but as soon as you jump in the sea, you're going to have a real problem. So, that's what we're trying to educate people. And we don't want them to read all the papers that we've done or read all the books that we've read. We just want them to have the framework to go practice a little bit more effectively and enjoy golf. That's really what it is that we're trying to achieve.
Since you brought that up on the differences between repetitive, let's say block practices for those in the industry or coaching or that play a lot of golf and follow things. And the decade system seems like Scott Fawcett seems to say that there's nothing wrong with that. And I know that you and he have agreed, but also disagreed on the way that practice should be happening.
Yeah. And I'm gonna preface this. I'm not trying to be right. I'm just trying to influence behavior.
Mm-hmm.
So it's undeniable that golfers waste time on the range. Majority of golfers waste time on the range. A lot of tour players waste time on the range. They go to the range and hit balls because they don't really know what else to do with their time when they're away from their wife and kids. And that's based on conversations I've had with tour players. So I'm not trying to be right when I say this. I'm just trying to help people modify their habits, because if they modified their habits somewhat, they would enjoy playing golf more. They would potentially shoot lower scores. So my belief is this, and this comes, and I can, if you want, I can reference the academia and the people that have helped me. My belief is blocked practice is okay. If you are a good player, it should never be more than a block of 5. If you are an average to beginner player, it can be a block of maybe 10 to 15 golf balls. But what you need to do is, if you're on the range and you have a swing drill or you're hitting shots, you can do 5 of the same shot to the same target. But then you want to go and get 5 more balls and you want to change the target, or you want to change the drill that you're doing. And the reason that you want to do this is because adding variability and adding space between each shot, so more space between each shot and more variability in task, will re-engage the brain. So let's say it's me and you on the range. I get 50 balls, you get 50 balls. I'm going to hit the same 50 shots. You're going to only get 5 of your 50 balls and put them down, and you're going to hit those 5. And you're going to make those 5 last 5 minutes. And then after you've hit those 5, you're going to go and get 5 more, and you're going to change the drill, or you're going to change the task, and you're going to make those balls last 5 minutes. Now, I've probably hit 25 balls and you're through 10. So your brain is remaining engaged in what you're doing because you've put space between each shot. So let's say you hit good shot. Now you're waiting 30, 40 seconds. Your brain is like, oh, I'm forgetting it. You have to concentrate more. You have to recall through memory what you just did. Whereas I'm just in this physical flow, right? Just ball, rake, hit. The spacing effect has meant your brain stays engaged. Then after 5 balls, you've changed and you've done again. And then after those 5 balls, you've gone back to the original task. So now your brain is like, oh, we went back to that original task. How did I achieve success last time? Oh, that was it. I felt this in my left wrist. And then I did, okay, let's do that again. Whereas I haven't had any time to think. I'm just in this physical flow, just hit. So in your brain, because your brain is engaged, synaptogenesis is taking place. So that's the firing and wiring of synapses in the brain. There's still electricity flowing through your brain, changing the patterns in your brain. My brain is just blood flowing around there. There's no synaptogenesis because my brain's got bored, because my task is far too repetitive and it's disengaged. So I'm okay with blocked practice if it's blocks of 5 and 2 different tasks. And all I'm asking you to do is alternate from block 1 to block 2, back to block 1, back to block 2. That's it. And it's called interleaving. So that's a more effective way of practicing than most people practice now, because you're going to induce deeper forms of learning, because you're actually keeping your brain engaged and creating cognition. That's how we learn. Whereas if you've just hit ball after ball after ball after ball, then ultimately you're going to struggle to stay engaged. Now, is Tiger Woods superhuman? Can he hit 1,000 balls and stay engaged in every one? Is Alex Noren superhuman? Was Serena Williams superhuman? Maybe block practice worked for them, right? Because they have this incredible motivation and they have a different skill set to most of us walking the planet. But is my dad superhuman, who's off 17 and wants to get down to 12? No, he's not. So again, when we talk about this, it's hard because I'm trying to just influence behavior for the masses. I'm not trying to specifically answer the question, is blocked or random practice better? In fact, it's not even a debate that I want to be in, because it's almost archaic to me now. It's so old. Mm-hmm. That question was being asked a decade ago and no one could answer it then, and it's still being asked now. Why are we still asking the same questions? Why aren't we actually trying things to help people practice better, rather than just trying to answer a question for man points, if you like, or whatever it might be? So yeah, that's where I'm at with it.
You know, and I don't know Scott. I followed him. I read his material, and I think very highly of him. And I don't think he's trying to combat you. But I have seen him disagree with. But I do think there's a place for that block practice. But I also think if you're wanting to take it to the course and what you teach, that yes, it's not that you're training your swing so much when you're doing changing variables and changing the space in between shots. It's not so much that your muscles are changing. It's you're preparing your brain that in a similar fashion as you can get to that it's going to experience on the golf course. You know, you hit a drive and then you're going to walk to your ball. Maybe it takes 2 or 3 minutes. And you're going to hit a different shot. You're constantly hitting different shots.
Yeah, and that when I say that answer, it's not directed at Scott. Scott's decade system will help every single club golfer shoot a lower score that hasn't done it. That's a fact. If you're not strategically smart as an elite level player and you follow Scott's system or he comes and caddies for you, you will shoot lower scores. The decade system that Scott has done is incredible, and I actually recommend it to all my players. So when I give that answer, and me and Scott, we engage in these, but I never directly disagree with him. I'll ask him a question, and he'll never directly disagree with me because I don't really go down the block versus random route. So that answer was just directed on the whole as, look, blocked practice in its absolute purest form of hitting 100 balls to the same target, it's not going to help. It might help a complete beginner who can't get the ball in the air. But as soon as you show some form of skill development, the way to learn is not to discover the feeling and keep it. It's to lose the feeling and be able to rediscover it. That's how we learn. And most golfers through block practice are going to be like my dad. I've got it. I've cracked it. I've finally got it. And then they just can't find that move the next day because it was ball 19 through 47 that they hit well.
Mm-hmm.
And what it needs to be is ball number 3's hit well, ball number 4's hit well, ball number 5 is hit average, or ball number 5 is maybe hit well as well. And then you stop and you do a different task for 5 balls. Then you come back and now you've got to rediscover that feeling. So, you know, that is how we learn. And then if we want to transfer that, as well as spacing and as well as variability, then we need some form of challenge. So there needs to be some form of outcome. Like if you're a beginner golfer or an average golfer, if you hit it in the center of the face, you might get a point. And you can only leave the range when you've got 15 points, maximum of maybe 50 balls. Well, if you get down to your last 3 balls and you've got 12 points or 13 points, now there's an outcome on the line. So there's a little bit of a stress response there. So we have to learn to inoculate that stress response, which is very representative of them playing golf. So blocked practice, it lacks spacing, it lacks variability, and generally it lacks challenge. And they are 3 scientific factors that we need in our practice if we want to retain our swing and transfer it to the course. We have to have spacing, variability, and challenge. So I don't necessarily believe that the debate is what's better, blocked versus random. Like I said, I'm not going to engage in that. What I'm saying is, okay, we need spacing, we need variability, and we need challenge in people's practice. How can we as coaches set up a training environment that induces spacing, variability, and challenge?
Would you say that the average Joe, like similar to your dad, who's engaging in repetitive hitting of balls, even when they tend to play a little better than they think, it will only be for, let's say, 3 to 4, maybe 5 holes, and then they lose it because that's how they've been training?
I don't know if they would lose it related to that's how they've been training their swing. I think they would lose it because after 4, 5, or 6 holes, they might start thinking about their score and now all of a sudden they're going to win the roll up, and now all of a sudden they're going to get their handicap down by 2 shots, and then they can go into the clubhouse after and everyone has to buy them a beer. I think they start thinking of all of that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Because on the range, generally, there's no consequence. All of a sudden now, you've played well for 6 holes, the finish line's in sight, there's a consequence. Don't blow it. Don't mess up. Oh, I want to get the trophy. I want to get my name on the board. I want that Instagram picture. And if you're not used to accessing your best swing mechanics when there's a consequence, then it's not representative of what you're about to face on the golf course. So I would say that those 5, 6, 7 holes where they play well and then they lose it is probably more of an inability to play with an outcome or a consequence on the line, because that's kind of alien to them. And we'll see that, right? We've seen that when Smiley Kaufman was in the final group of the Masters. He hadn't been there before, and it didn't bode well for him. We saw it Rory McIlroy when he was leading the Masters by 4 strokes, and he hadn't been there before, and it was probably immense pressure that he'd never, ever, ever felt. And then all of a sudden, couldn't access his best golf swing. Adam Scott was leading the Open. I think he was 3 shots clear with 4 holes to go. Finished bogey, 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 bogey. And it was all because all of a sudden there was this consequence on the line, and he got completely outcome focused, didn't have that ability to just remain in the process of hitting the shots to the finish line. So if it happens to the tour players at that level, it's sure going to happen to golfers when they're trying to stumble over the finish line in a tournament, you know. So, and we've seen all of those guys, except Smiley Kaufman, unfortunately, rectify it, learn from that experience, and not make those mistakes again.
Mm-hmm. You had mentioned that there's almost 2 differences. There's a swing change, and then there's a range to the course. And then the second was the space, the variability, and the challenge. Does the latter, the 3 things, space, variability, and challenge, is that something that is used on both of those things, or is it?
Yeah, it would be. Yeah. So
let's talk about swing change first, since that's what, you know, people are always looking to change their swing, or they get a lesson, they got a member guest, or they get a club championship, city championship, what have you. So let's go to swing change first and kind of let everyone know that process and the space, variability, and challenge thing that's in your book.
Yeah. So I think that the you bring up a great point. The question you should ask yourself, any golfer or any coach should ask themselves, when the golfer arrives, if it's for a lesson, the coach should be asking themselves, is this person training to learn, or is this person training to perform? So if a person is training to learn, that might be a part skill, like changing a golf swing. Okay, so we want to learn something. Is this person training to perform? If this person is training to perform, then it's more about getting it done. You're going to have a task. You're going to have a challenge. There's going to be an outcome. You've got to stick to your pre-shot routine. You're going to be scored, and you've got to get it done. So if you're there, if you go to the range and you want to change your golf swing, okay, how do we use spacing, variability, and challenge? So the first thing I would do is not have the pyramid right next to the hitting zone. I would move the pyramid, 10 feet back or 5 feet back. And then if you've got a swing drill that your coach has given you, you just get one ball at a time and you do that drill 5 times. And then you might change to drill number 2. Or it might be something simple, like you're going to then have 5 full swing shots, slow motion. And you just get one ball at a time and you do that. And then you go back to the original drill, one ball at a time. And it just keeps you more engaged. Moving the pyramid back, walking each time to get one ball, having a clear goal of what you want to do with that ball and then executing it injects spacing, variability, and it injects challenge into the practice in the way of you have to think more. So for a tour player, spacing and variability should be super high. Super high. If Tiger Woods is making a swing change, spacing and variability should be super high.
And the space is the time in between shots.
Space is the time in between shots. So let's say I was doing this for Tiger. If Tiger Woods wanted to make a swing change, I'm sure he listens to the podcast. So if he wants to, I'll give you my number. I'll give you my number at the end, and you can reach out. Let's say he's working on something. So for Tiger, it might be 1 or 2 balls hitting the shot at 20% speed, first ball, 40% speed, next ball. And then he has to go hole an 8-foot putt before he comes back, hits the shot at 20% speed, 40% speed. Then he has to go hole a 6-foot putt. Then he comes back and then he has to hit the shot at 20% speed, 40% speed. Then he has to go and hole an 8-foot putt. Because all the time, the space and the difference in task is keeping his brain working hard to remember the movement. And that is high spacing, high variability, and high challenge. Now, I had a guy today who followed me on Instagram. He did all my online courses, and he's pretty beginner golfer, and he's highly, highly, highly motivated. So he paid me up front for 6 months. Super motivated guy. I want to do it. And his challenge was he had 10 shots where he was working on something, and then he had to go and hole a 3-foot putt, and then he had to hit one out of the bunker, full swing out of the bunker, and hit the center of the face. And then he would come back to his 10 practice shots, doing his drill. So spacing there is a little less. Variability is a little less. Challenge is a little less. Because he's going 10 balls, 2 tasks, 10 balls. And my example with Tiger Woods is 2 balls technique, task, 2 balls technique, task. So Tiger's constantly, his environment is changing every 2 balls, whereas this guy is changing it every 10 balls. And that is how you get a swing change to stick. It's if you imagine the gym, if you're in the gym working out, a lot of people set up circuits in the gym. They don't just do 150 reps on the bench right. and then leave. You know, they might do 5 on the bench, 5 on the legs, and then they might do some ab crunches, or they'll do 3 sets on the bench, take a rest, 3 sets on the ab crunch, take a rest, 3 sets. You know, how you set up a circuit training session in the gym is very much how you should set up a golf practice session on the range if you're wanting to change your golf swing. Yeah, purely because it induces spacing, variability, and challenge.
And you and I briefly got to talk about that at the coach camp last year. I wish we would have had more time, and hopefully we have time today. We don't run out. We'll get into periodization, the adaptation between training in, like you said, in the gym, and how you can periodize your practice and your spacing, variability, challenge idea to implement a swing change. If you have, let's say, 8 weeks that you have a tournament coming up, but you need to make the swing change, you go 8 weeks out and you use the principles that you have and you slowly modify them as you get closer and closer to the event, so that you've implemented them, and then you can use them at the tournament to where your mind is just made the adaptation, but it's ready to play.
Yeah, and you know, another yeah, you're right. And another good example of this is, you know, if someone's going to play a putting game. So what a lot of people will do is, a lot of people will just hit putts aimlessly on the putting green. No consequence. Better than that is to play 9 holes. 9 holes, and you're trying to shoot 18. and you might make the putts between 10 and 30 feet. And you're going to go around the putting green and you're going to play 9 holes. So you'll hit the first putt. It rolls to 1.5 feet. You tap it in and you've got a 2. Now you're going to hit the next putt. How much space was there between finishing putting green number 1, your shot, your first putt, and then the next one? There wasn't much space at all.
Mm-mm.
Think of on the golf course, it's going to be at least 10 to 12 minutes before you get to hit your next putt. So in the golf range environment, you hit your putt, you get it to 1.5 feet, you tap it in, then you're going to hit your next putt. Well, now you've got readily available information on the speed of that green and the break. Even if you're hitting to a different hole, doesn't matter. You've still got some information and some feel that you would have, that you would not have readily available on the golf course. So you're cheating. And you're going to play hole number 2. And then guess what? You're going to go straight into hole number 3. And then you're going to go straight into number 4. And you might shoot 17 or 18 in this putting game. And you're like, man, my speed is good. I'm tapping it in. Let's go, baby. And then you get on the first green and you hit it and you roll it to 1.5 feet and you tap it in. Well, now you've got to wait 12 minutes till your next putt. You don't have that information readily available. Spacing on the golf course between putts is high. Variability is huge. Therefore, the challenge of putting well is a big challenge. And there's an outcome score.
Well, yeah, if you have a multiplier, it's that you're going from something that is supposedly at a certain tempo and rhythm, yet in between that slower, let's say, I don't want people writing in and saying, well, you said you need to have a slow tempo, but you get what I mean. A putt is much slower than a 5-iron or a driver. But so you're going from your last putt that, let's say, is a very slow tempo, 70 beats a minute, to a driver swing that's usually the next one, and let's just say 100 miles an hour, and then a 5-iron or 7-iron is going to be at 90 miles an hour for a tour pro or for a 7-iron, and then now they got to go back to a putt again. So yeah.
Well, and also, your playing partner outdrove you. You're already 3 over par after 2. You can't do anything but strike it in the toe. And you're just like, what is going on? And now you're on the green and it's been 12 minutes since you hit the last putt. So spacing variability and challenge in this instance would be, you're going to play 9 holes putting. You hit your first putt. You tap it in. There you go. You got your par. Now, go hit your driver on the range, and then hit an iron on the range, and then come back and play hole number 2. Then go hit a driver on the range and hit an iron on the range, then come back and play hole number 3. All of a sudden, your practice is a little bit more representative. And you know what's going to happen? You're going to shoot a higher score in the practice game. But the skills that you are building are going to help you on the golf course. Because what we seek as humans is we want to do this putting game and score 16 and feel great about ourselves and build confidence, but it's a false confidence because we're not doing it with enough spacing, variability, or challenge.
Or so I would almost say a realistic spacing variability challenge.
Yeah, right? and even on the range with my example, right, it's still going to be lower, but at least it's going to be more representative. And then you can get real clever. Play the 9-hole putting challenge, but also give yourself a mulligan or a bonus putt if you hit 3 drives in the center of the face in a row. Or every time you hit your wedge shot inside a certain distance, you can inside a certain proximity, you get to knock 1 stroke off your putting score. Now, all of a sudden, there's an outcome on the drive, there's an outcome on the wedge, and guess what? You're almost playing golf on the range. But you know the other thing about this? It's fun. So I've built, I call it golf outs. I've built 30 of those challenges that I have in a PDF. where ultimately, if you want to take your range game to the course, you have to bring the course to the range. And to be honest, people have said this before. So imagine you're hitting a fairway. Imagine you're then hitting to the green. Well, that's okay, but where's the consequence? And where's the spacing? And then we need maybe a little bit more variability. So we should walk and hit a chip, or we should walk and hit a putt. But what you don't want to happen is you don't want to play a putting game and just get good at that game and not have it transfer to the golf course. We see that a lot with the TrackMan Combine. The TrackMan Combine, people will start shooting better and better and better scores, but it doesn't actually improve their golf on the golf course. And the reason for that is the Combine lacks spacing, variability, and challenge. If the Combine was a lot more randomized, if there was more space between reps, then it would be a more accurate reflection of how we play golf. So often the enhanced performance on the Combine doesn't transfer for that very reason that I've just explained.
So for let's say the average golfer's listening to this and 18 handicap, they've come to me for a lesson and they've got to get a better turn in their hips, that they're not using their hips. They have to get a better pivot. And then get them tuned up. Here's what you have to do, Mr. Smith. And then they call you up and say, okay, Iain, I got my lesson. I know what I need to do. Now, give me my practice routine so I can make sure that I don't go on the wrong path and I stay on the right path. What are you going to give an example that we just went through the technical side of all the language and everything. So let's give everyone an example.
Yeah, so I love what you've just said. I love because you have basically, and this is what I do. I don't work alone. I have a team of coaches that help me. So you have analyzed, okay, this is what the golfer needs to change.
Mm-hmm.
Then I'm the guy that's going to tell them this is how you're going to do it. Because all too often in golf, we all know what we need to change and why, but we don't know how. And that's hopefully the problem that I'm trying to address in golf. So how are you going to do it? Well, it might be something as simple as, let's call it a two-station circuit. So ball number one, station one, you're going to have a practice swing where you make the correct hip movement. Then you're going to have a practice swing where you make your old hip movement. Then you're going to have a practice swing where you make the correct hip movement. And then you'll hit the ball. And you'll do that 4 more times. So 5 balls in total. And I call this the sandwich drill. Well, I don't call it that. The person who invented it calls it that. I can't remember who it is. I can't remember. I think it's in a book that I read. I don't know. I can't credit them because I don't know the individual, but it's scientifically proven anyway to help change a motor pattern. So you're going to sandwich the bad move or the undesired move in between the 2 good ones in 3 practice swings, and then you're going to hit the ball. And you're going to do that 5 times. That's blocked practice, right? Mm-hmm. It's the same task over and over again. And then what you're going to do is you're going to go through your full routine. So you're going to pick a target, you're going to go through your full routine, and you're going to swing, and you're just going to hit a golf tee. And if you feel like that was a great process with a great swing move, you're not going to break flow. You're going to come back. You're going to recreate the same process, and then you're going to hit the ball, and you're just going to let the ball get in the way. And the reason you're going to do that is I want to see if you can make that move without the outcome of the golf ball. And if you can, we know you can do it. Then you just have to get used to doing it with the golf ball there. And you'll do that 4 more times. And then you'll go and hole a 3-foot putt and a 6-foot putt. And once you've holed the 3-foot putt and the 6-foot putt, you're allowed to come back and do station 1 again and station 2 again. And then you go hold a 3-foot and a 6-foot putt. And people get so pissed when they miss that 6-foot putt and they're not allowed to come back and practice technique. Because I'll either make them hit the putts until they're successful, or I'll give them a time penalty. So Stuart Morgan taught me this one. It's called stand or deliver. So if you don't deliver on the putting green, you got to stand there for 5 minutes and do nothing.
Oh,
That's
enough of an incentive to make it.
There you go. And that's an outcome that no one wants. But what else? Why is Stuart so clever when he does that? Because we just increase the spacing effect. So actually, it's beneficial.
Do you find that increases their focus, desire, and everything else to achieve?
Absolutely. When I see them reacting to a missed 6-foot putt worse than they would react on the golf course, I believe success, because it looks real and it feels real. That putt mattered. They lined the ball up, they marked it, they took their breathing exercises, they went through the whole routine. Whether they make it or not is irrelevant, because they got a complete repetition of hitting a putt. And that's the key, right? Often blocked practice, just hitting balls on the range, it's not a total process. People say, I want to get my reps in. But what kind of rep do you want? Just the part of the golf swing where you swing the club? Or do you want the part where you have to analyze the shot and then deal with the disappointment when you've missed? Because they're all part of a golf shot. So when people say to me, I want my reps, so I'm just going to hit these balls quickly because I've got half an hour and I want to get as many reps as possible, I try and educate them that you need complete reps. So if you think of the circuit that I built, everything is done almost in a full swing. Well, everything was full swing in that example. There's no drills there. There's no part movements. You make a full. So I'll go through it again because I think actually that would be a good circuit for listeners to try. So whatever they're trying to change in their golf swing, you go 5 balls, good move, bad move, good move, or desired move, undesired move, desired move, and then you'll hit the shot. You do that 5 times, and then you'll do a complete routine to a target, but you'll just pretend to hit the ball, and you'll try and make the swing move. And if you're happy, you'll add the ball, and you'll try and recreate just that same feeling and that same movement, and just let the ball get in the way. Do that 5 times, then go to the putting green, hole a 3-foot putt and a 6-foot putt. If you miss either of those putts, it's a 3-minute time penalty before you can then come back and start your practice circuit again. And you know what's key to that? It's also fun. They're going to enjoy practice. So I'm quite proud of the way that myself and everyone at Game Like Training has taken the research papers that categorically tell us the spacing effect, the variability effect, challenge point. These are 3 essential key components in how we learn. I'm actually very proud of how we've taken that and make it practical for the golfer to apply in their practice. And when people buy into this, and my guy today, who's a beginner golfer, he's been playing like 8 months. He sends me messages saying how fun it is and how engaged he is. And people look at him like he's strange on the golf range because he moves the ball back and he's always moving around. And he says, but they're the strange ones because they don't know what I know.
Right.
And that's what I want, right? Like to me, that's my reward. I got this guy who he can shoot anywhere between 85 and 100. And he's freaking just injecting spacing, variability, and challenge. We haven't even looked at his swing. He's just got games for low point control, games for centerness of strike. None of the games last any more than 5 balls. And then he goes onto the course. He plays a hole with no golf ball, just talking his routine out loud, hitting a tee instead of the golf ball, because then he gets to feel what a routine with absolutely no fear or no worry of outcome feels like. And then he plays 1 hole doing the same with a golf ball, trying to recreate. And then once he's kind of in his flow, he plays 2-ball worst ball for 3 holes, and he can't be any more than 3 over. And he did it. This guy's been playing 8 months, and he played 2-ball worst ball and was 3 over for 2-ball worst ball. That's probably better than I would have shot. And to me, it's just fun, right? And he's engaged in it. He's not frustrated when he plays golf. And I'll ask him, what was your feedback on that? And he's like, breathing. Didn't get into my breathing exercise, which meant I was tight, which meant I didn't get the movements that I wanted. He's starting to join up the dots that the mental game and the technical game, they're not separate. They actually synergize. So training like this helps you access your best golf swing when you need it, not just keep trying to build a golf swing that's not yours and you're never going to own.
And to me, it seems like people would be very reluctant to do it because, as you said, it gets them out of their comfort level, it gets them out of that false sense of security and false building of confidence. But it seems like the adaptation that they make would be relatively quickly, because that is how human beings, is animals, for lack of a better term, are wired to make adaptation and advance themselves. And right? What am I wrong in saying? Or am I correct?
No, we are learning machines, right?
Right.
I'm surprised if anyone listening to this podcast has ever taken a walking lesson, but we can all walk. We all worked it out, right? And we did it by falling over, getting up, falling over. And if you're from Canada, you can probably walk on ice way better than if you're from Florida.
Mm-hmm.
Because, as you just said, you adapt. And if you're from Florida, you're probably not that idiot that's running along the beach setting their feet on fire when they're walking through that white sand that just annihilates the soles of your feet. That's the Canadian guy. So we create what's called affordances. Now, on the flip side to that, on the flip side to you being correct, there's motivation. If you are someone that loves hitting golf balls on the range, finds fulfillment out of it, and that's what you want to do because you love it, and it's almost meditative or hypnotic, and it's relaxing, and it's your thing. You finish at the office, your husband's crazy or your wife's crazy when you go home, the kids are crazy, and you just want 40 minutes of hitting golf balls because you love to hit golf balls on the range. There is nothing wrong with that. That should be encouraged. If you are a golfer who loves to hit golf balls and that's your thing that you do, then great. But just do it knowing that when you do venture out onto the golf course, it's not going to be like that. It's not a transfer appropriate process. Mm-hmm. But if your goal isn't to play great golf, if your goal is just to relax after a stressful day at work, then I'm all for it. Keep going. But if you want to get better at golf is a problem-solving game that's done in an ever-changing environment. It's pretty stressful. There's high level of space. There's high level of variability. There's high level of challenge. So if you want to get better at golf, your practice needs to reflect that. So I agree. People that take it on, I agree exactly what you said. They'll adapt to this very quickly, unless they're not motivated to do so. And everyone's different. So there are, when people come to me for a lesson, I do free 30-minute consultations because this isn't for everyone. Now, my guy Clay, who I'm telling you about, I have never, ever known someone be so motivated to play golf after just playing golf for 8 months. And I tend to do a lot of traveling. I tend to work with college players, LPGA players, travel down to Florida to see David Ledbetter. Now, I can't do that at the minute. So I took Clay on as a customer because, number one, he was so motivated, but number two, it was an appropriate time for me to do so because I can't travel. And I love it. And the reason I love it is not because he's the greatest player in the world, because he's not, but his motivation is so high and he's so growth-minded and open to learning. It's just fun being with him. And I want that for other players and other coaches.
Well, yeah, you get somebody that's that passionate, and they're coming to you because they want to improve. I mean, most people do, but you know that they're going to listen to you.
Yeah, because his motivation is high.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and like I say, his motive and he seeked this out and he wanted it, but it's not for everyone. So to your point, like, yes, everyone will adapt, but only if you're motivated and buy into this concept and believe in it.
And one of the reasons I don't advertise. I mean, I have a presence on social media, but I don't push it very hard. If someone comes to me, then they're going to want to work with me, and I'm not going to work with them for 1 or 2 or 3 lessons. They're going to, not buy into the whole thing, and then they're not that I need them to, but I don't want to work with someone once or twice and then they just take off. Because you're right, you can't really do a whole hell of a lot.
No, I mean, if you want to come and see me for 1 hour, it's pretty expensive because it's a deterrent.
Mm-hmm.
I can't remember the last time I did a 1 hour session. I think I did one for a friend at CrossFit. That's it. And it probably I think I charged him for an hour, but it lasted 3 or 4. And I gave him a practice program off the back of it. And when I see him at CrossFit, I ask him if he's doing it, and he laughs and says, no, he's too busy at work. But, it's like, which came first, the chicken or the egg? Do people desire quick fixes and a 1 hour lesson because that's the way we built golf? So the customers responded to that? Or did we do the 1 hour lesson because the customers wanted the quick fix? So we just built our systems and processes around that. I think, like, you have a choice. Do you want to provide something that the market demands, or do you want to provide something that the market needs? I'm trying to provide something that the market needs. I'm trying to solve a problem of making swing changes stick, making skills transfer to the course. But, it is a lot easier to sell a lesson. Hey, what you need to do is you need to get your wrist in this position, or you need to get your hips in this position. Okay, next. And it's not working. And unfortunately, like, a lot of the big publications and media outlets will phrase things that way to attract the attention of the consumer. I'm even probably guilty of that to some extent on my Instagram, because I want to get people in and then allow them to actually discover, oh, okay, this is what it's actually all about.
Mm-hmm.
So it's hard. It's hard one, right? It's very hard, and if you have bills to pay at home as a coach and someone offers you, hey, I just want one lesson, here's $200, and you've got kids, you got to pay for them, and what are you going to do? You can't turn it down, right? So it's very, very hard to get that balance between business, what's best for your family and you and the bottom line, and what's best for the consumer and the market. There's a lot going on in the golf industry that restricts what a lot of us, or we believe restricts what we can do. Yeah,
I would agree. What we went across it or discuss a swing change and the 3 variable or the space variability and challenge. How would that differ from taking your range game to the course?
Yeah, so the circuit that I gave you, where I said, like, the good swing, bad swing, good swing, mm-hmm. and the routine and hit, and the routine and hit, that was more training to learn. You're going to be a bit more focused on your movement on that one, and you're not going to be so concerned about ball flight. And then the putting one that I gave you, where I would be like, you play 1 hole putting and then you go hit your driver and you get a point for the center of the face, or you then hit a wedge and you get a extra bonus ball if you do X, Y, Z. That would be more transfer to the course. So training to learn and the retention of a swing movement, we're using spacing, variability, and challenge to learn how to move. And then skill transfer, we're using spacing, variability, and challenge to create an environment that's more representative of golf. And when it's training to perform, there's going to be a lot more outcomes placed on that individual. So I can give you an example of one for the golf course. So if you're a slicer of the golf ball, you have to aim down the center of the fairway. And if the ball lands in the right rough, it's a 50-yard penalty backwards.
Ooh.
If the ball lands anywhere else on the course, it's a 25-yard bonus forwards. And then you're going to pick, I'm going to land this on the left side of the pin or the right side of the pin. If you land it, let's say you say, okay, I'm going to eliminate the left side. The ball is going to land on the right. If it lands on the right-hand side of the flag, automatic 12-foot putt for birdie. If it lands on the left side of the flag, plugged bunker shot. Automatic plugged bunker shot. So now every shot has this weird outcome. Huge reward or huge penalty. So people start learning to play under stress. And then you can add bonuses for if you shape it a certain way. Then you can add bonuses for certain proximities to the hole. And, I have a guy that I coaches on PGA Tour Canada. Just a great kid. Great kid. And me and him together have built this game. We haven't got time to go through all the rules. But he was like, I want to fail. I want the hardest game. It's something like he has to hit 2 drives. And if both drives land on the fairway, then he has a 9-iron in his hand with his approach. If one drive misses the fairway, then he has a 4-iron in for his approach. If both drives miss the fairway, then he loses the hole and he has to start again. Like legit has to come off the golf course and go back to the first. And he's got to get through 4 holes without making a bogey. And every second putt, he adds 5 feet to. So it's tough, right? Super tough.
Very, yeah.
Well, then if he gets through the first 4 holes, he's going to play normal off the tee, but he has to hit his approach shot inside PGA Tour distance minus 10%. Sorry, PGA Tour proximity minus 10%. If he doesn't, then he has to take it, and it has to be the longest possible putt that he can find on the green. And if he doesn't 2-putt, the whole game restarts again from the first. He's been, and then he has to birdie the 9th. So he goes through those 2 sort of sets of challenges, and then it's 1 ball, has to birdie number 9 or maybe it has to be 1 under par for 8 and 9 to close out the game. I can't remember the exact rules, but we have just created so many outcomes that it's a lot. Every shot is a lifeline for him. And, he's going to miss on the 4th hole. And then he has to go back. It might be a 25-minute, 60-minute wait for the tee again. That's it. That's what we said. That's what we agreed. And he'll go out, and this game, he'll dedicate 7 hours. I got 7 hours to get this done. And that's training to perform. That is training to perform. Because then when he goes to PGA Tour of Canada, he's got 2 things. No matter where he hits it, he's not moving the ball, and there's not these crazy consequences. So he's a bit more relaxed. He's actually trained under extreme stress. And then the second thing is he's looking around him, and he knows no one's trained like him. He knows no one's putting themselves through that on the golf course. So that's where the psychology comes in, right?
Mm-hmm.
He's got this slight mental edge, and he was a Division 3 player. He's the only Division 3 player to ever play in the Palmer Cup, and he has a chip on his shoulder because he was a D3 player, and he's now playing at a good level. So when you get a kid who's got a chip on his shoulder, who is willing to put himself under all these pressures in practice and stresses in practice to then go to a tournament and feel a bit more relaxed, it's quite a strong combination. And they're areas of his game that would suggest that he wouldn't play on the PGA Tour. But it's just numbers, right? Like certain driving distance or X amount of proximity, whatever it might be in his stats would say, okay, this area needs cleaning up and this area needs cleaning up. But he has to go play. We can't clean those areas up forever. He has to go play. So practicing like this is teaching him to play under as much pressure as he possibly can during a practice round. And he competes with himself. So that is the absolute, like, highest example of trying to transfer your best game to the golf course. Making golf so much harder, having so many more outcomes and stresses to deal with in practice than you would in tournament play.
Well, the other thing that I learned the hard way was he's not wearing out his body either.
Correct. Yeah. That's a great.
Right.
We haven't even gone down that road.
I mean, I'm a different era. It was back then. It was you just keep hitting balls until you hit them better or the way you want to.
Well, if we take this all the way back to one of the first questions, the blocks and random thing, what about if Tiger had done less block practice, not from a learning standpoint, but from a physical standpoint?
Mm-hmm.
If he might have a bit of less metal work in his back, his knee might be strong. Who knows? This is all I don't know. I'm not an expert in that area, but there's enough evidence to suggest that that volume of hitting golf balls is going to take its toll on your body.
Without a doubt, it has to. The body is not built to rotate the way the golf swing requires, and at the speed that today's players are doing it at.
It's funny at junior golf academies when you've been there, I've been there. Wrist injuries and lower back injuries are a big one. You know, I think they call them repetitive strain injuries.
Right.
A lot of kids taping up their wrists and, you know, because the secret's in the dirt, right? The more balls you hit, the luckier you get. And the more balls you hit, muscle memory. And that stuff is, they're urban legends almost. They're myths now. It's not the case. And it's great players that said those things. I'm not taking anything away from those players whatsoever. But we live in a world now where people aren't going to use a wooden shafted golf club because technology is advanced, but they're still modeling the practice habits of 1930, 1940, 1950, and the understanding of how we learn is advanced. It just hasn't made it into the mainstream like technology has. And those myths, unfortunately, do lead to junior golfers becoming physically and psychologically burnt out, which is one of the biggest challenges I faced when I was at the junior golf academies. So I agree. Practicing this way is a great way of getting complete repetition of golf shots, not just part reps, full reps. And it's also a great way to protect your body.
Mm-hmm. You know, in talking to John Sinclair last week, you know, he's a golf psych master, and it is the 8 traits of champions that he worked on with. I can't remember the doctor's name, the psychologist that they did the study. But what I wanted to ask you was if you take something like that, and I studied a lot of Dr. Howard Gardner's information, which deals with 8 intelligences and how you learn faster, whether it's visual or hands-on, you know, the list goes on. How does your program utilize any of those other disciplines or parts of the paradigm, or can it just utilize, you know, because somebody's going to be more at creative, like a Bubba Watson. Somebody's going to be a lot more technical, like let's say a Charles Howell comes to mind, maybe. And I'm just throwing examples out there. I could be wrong, but how would you differentiate your program based off the certain differences of a personality or their learning style or what have you?
Yeah, so that's a great question. First of all, you know, credit to John. Like when I saw him speak at Coach Camp, he's unreal, right? I'm going to go back and listen to that podcast because I don't get engrossed in that many golf presentations anymore because I've seen so many, I think.
Mm-hmm.
But John he's so good. He's so articulate. He's such an interesting guy. He's coached at the highest level.
It's a travesty. He's like 12th in Texas. He's not even in the top 100. And I asked him, said, how is that even possible?
Because he's got, it's hard to have such expertise in so many. Like for me, I've niched myself in practice, and I've niched myself in the mental game, and that's really it. But John's talking on the mental game, biomechanics. Like he's obsessed. He might be one of those that's obsessed, right? He's his knowledge and delivery and the way he conducts himself I think it's awesome. So I'm going to go and listen to that podcast. I'd be interested to hear what he said on this. For me, the learning styles thing, I can't comment on. I haven't done that much research in that area or study in that area. I don't know that much about learning styles, or even personality profiles. I've taken them. I've read bits. I'm undecided on both of those things. But what I can say is, when I take a player on, I need to be careful. Sometimes less is more. So if I'm going to take Charles Howell on and he's very technical and I want spacing and variability and challenge to be X because he's a tour player, but he's been a ball beater in the past, which is Z, I need to maybe make it Y. So I have to like sneak it in over time.
Mm-hmm.
If Tiger Woods comes to me, I know I've used him as examples. What changes am I going to make? Maybe I'm just going to tell him, you know what, Tiger, you're good. Keep doing what you're doing. Give him a high five, stand back and watch. And maybe make sure that he's happy off the golf course and that he's getting enough time with his kids. And I can be someone that he can talk to about other things, football or whatever it wants. Like, because one guaranteed way to help someone play better is to make them happy. So, I might throw everything I've talked about for the last hour and a half. We might throw all that away, and I might be their friend and ask them how things are with the girlfriend and go eat with them at a restaurant and chat and play computer games, whatever it might be, right? And then I might get someone like my guy Clay, who I've told you about. I could tell Clay, hey, Clay, let's do some roly-polies down this hill. I promise it will make you better. And he'll have done 3 before I even get to the top of the hill. So I wouldn't necessarily adapt it on personality style or learning style. I would like to think I've got sort of a coach's intuition to know whether, okay, we got to drip feed this in. Okay, we got to buy more trust. Okay, we got to do this a little bit more in line with the player's beliefs. Or, you know what, this player just want to talk. And and the biggest challenge I've had with players going from mini tour to the European tour is not how they practice. It's not how the skill transfer. It's getting used to that life. It's getting used to being away from the wife. It's getting used to getting on a plane. It's, I'm in the top 400 of the world. I've just broken into top 400 of the world and I'm still broke. How are you going to deal with that?
Mm-hmm.
So I can't really directly answer your question. I don't know. But there's a definite way of tailoring it to the individual. It's not going to be a cookie cutter approach. I have written a couple of practice plans that I guess that are pretty generic that I believe can help most people. But then if you come and see me, you pay more than just getting a generic program. I would hope a lot of the value that price tag holds is my ability to make it optimal for you. So I guess that's a good word, like spacing, variability, and challenge. I've explained it in sort of beginner, intermediate, and advanced, or beginner and tour player. I guess what we're talking about is making the spacing, variability, and challenge optimal for that individual. If 18 handicapper comes to me, And the first thing I do is give him that game that I give to the guy from PGA Tour Canada. That's that relationship over, right? He goes home to the kids and kicks the cat and tells the kids they're not working hard enough in school and starts crying. So we just got to use the coach's intuition.
I would have to venture to say that if you took what you did for different individuals based off what they're telling you and how they're acting, and you devise a practice plan for them, and then you took that plan to someone like John, or you took it to someone like Dr. Gardner, I would venture to say that they would say, yes, what Iain is doing coincides with the research that we've done based off this person's personality and what we see that is their default. I would have to venture to say that, because you're not going to get the results you're getting and have the growth of your business and the trust of players who rely on you for their living if it's not working. And obviously John's the same, and somebody at an advanced level like a Dr. Gardner or any other, and I just say his name because I'm not very privy to that industry, but if people are coming to you for their livelihood or because they're very much need of some help and they've gone other avenues and you start to help them, they continue to come back, I would have to say that it might be different language, but I would relate it that it's semantics, but it is equaling the same thing. I would have to say.
Yeah. That. And yeah, that's a big compliment, so I appreciate that. And I think the cool thing for me is I'm not independent. I'm interdependent with coaches. So, like, I need the guy there who has the ability to measure the swing. I need the guy there who understands TPI screens and can help the player move more effectively, because then I know what to put into the practice circuit and I know how to help them with their on-court processes and their mental game. And that's what I like. I think the biggest compliment is when a coach reaches out to me and asks me to work with a player, and they're not asking for any money. They're not asking for anything but my help to help this player get better, because they believe in the philosophy and they believe that they actually want to take less revenue themselves, give a portion of it to me to become part of their team. I think that's very flattering. And when that started to happen, that's when I started to gain a lot more, confidence in the industry, and more people then actually started to ask me to speak, and the sales of the book have been good. But it's definitely, a lot of this is down to people like Zach Parker, Stuart Morgan, Matthew Cook, Eric Zeigel, Chema Sanchez at Ledbetter, David Ledbetter himself, all of those guys, Dr. Robert Neal, they've all helped me, and professors have helped me feel like, yes, you're onto something. And then now I almost I do believe it myself, not because I'm out there shouting about it, but other people are sending players my way. So it's been a real cool experience. It's been great.
Well, your one book, the Golf Practice and Spacing, Variability, and Challenge, that's one of them. Your other book, the OSVEA, and I think it's Option, Selection, Visualization, if I remember. Let me think.
Yeah.
I read it. Execution, and I can never remember what the A stands for.
Acceptance.
So how does that differ from the other?
That's a great question. I think the Osphere I wrote before I really knew what I knew.
It's when you thought you knew everything and then realized
I thought I knew, and then I knew I didn't know. So I was very much into cognitive psychology, training players to hit shots, talking their routine out loud. There was no real mental drills for the mental game. Sorry, there was no real golf drills for the mental game, but there was a lot of golf drills for swing. So I started making a few drills that I felt could help people with their focus. And this book is really about, if you want to develop a pre-shot routine, this book will help you understand what professional players focus on, and it will help you, give you practical drills to develop that yourself. And it's also a solid book for, in life. If you're a young kid that wants to go to college, what are your options? Which one are you going to select? Visualize the outcome. And then, okay, now you've got to execute. So don't focus on the outcome of going to college. What processes, what steps are you going to execute? If it doesn't go your way, accept and adapt and deal with the adversity. And right, what are your options now? What are you going to select? So it's kind of life lessons in there as well. I think I wrote that at the period of my career where I was just starting to gain some confidence in my coaching. I'd done clinics in Mexico and clinics in Colombia. The parents at the Golf Academy, Bishopsgate and IJGA would receive my education well. The kids enjoyed it. So I tried to help mainly golf coaches with that book support people's mental games. So if you're a golf coach and you're interested in the mental game of golf and you want to help players evolve their mental game of golf, this is a good sort of synopsis of my education and the way that I coach that the pre-shot routine and golf's mental game. But what I found was that kids would get the education, or the students would get the education, they could apply it in practice, but it wasn't transferring to the golf course. And when I read that book back, there's little hints here and there of this is how you do it under stress, or this is how you get it to transfer, but it's not the core of my book. So you can kind of see how my coaching style was when I wrote that. It was more education and practically applying the education, rather than the golf practice one is, hey, here's the education, here's how you practically apply it. Now this is how you make it stick, and this is how you transfer it to the golf course. And that's what the first one doesn't go into. It sprinkles it and it touches upon it. But I found as soon as you started to put players in stressful environments, they will learn and adapt, as you said. We adapt. They will learn and adapt to deal with stress through having to deal with stress, not through working on their pre-shot routine with me. If they're working on their pre-shot routine with me, they get good at their pre-shot routine. But they don't get good at dealing with stress. So then when the stress hits on the golf course, pre-shot routine goes out the window. They know what they're meant to be doing, they just can't do it. Whereas the second book is almost like, hey, if you do everything that's in the second book, what's in the first book will kind of just you'll start to do it. You'll start to learn it.
Yeah, and for everybody listening, I'll have links to both of Iain's books in his website in the show notes. So anyone can access those, buy them, check them out. I've read them both. I've given them to students. I got one student I talked to today in Florida that said where he puts his bag of balls down 10 feet behind him, and he makes himself go back and pick up a ball before he hits another one, and goes through what he wants to do, sets his plan in his mind to do it, and then whether he does it or not is not the goal. It's following the principles you've spelled out, and he's noticing a big difference in his game.
I had one person message me. They watched a YouTube video. It was a guest video. It was myself and Zach Parker coaching golf iCity. Two like fun guys that have like a big viewing on YouTube, 30,000 followers on YouTube or whatever it is. And we gave them a lesson. And one guy messaged me through them and said, moving the pyramid of balls back 5 yards and taking one ball at a time has completely changed my ability to strike the ball on the golf course. He goes, my range striking and my golf course striking are as close together as they've ever been, purely because I moved the pyramid back and purely because I'm more engaged in practice. And that was his words, not mine. So it's science, right? It's the spacing effect. If you go and Google the spacing effect, it's there for everyone to read. This is what it's going to do to your learning process. So it's great when I get feedback like that. That's why I do this. And I'm appreciative of you sharing the information and passing on the books. And look, I'm happy to give free copies of the first few chapters of the books, or some free PDFs, or what we can talk about it off air. Whatever
Sure.
you think will be useful to your listeners. I love to give stuff away for free.
A lot of my listeners like to get stuff for free.
They're great. I love to give stuff away for free because it's not mine. It's just information that's readily available to anyone. I've just learned it and repackaged it. And, I want people to use it. I would rather someone use my stuff for free than, oh, it's $9.99, I don't want to pay for it, and not use it. I'd rather give it out for free, because eventually someone's going to get it for free. But even like my guy Clay, I keep mentioning him because he's just awesome. It was a YouTube video and a couple of free things and then a free call. Then all of a sudden, hey, dude, let's do 6 months. Okay. So you never know, right? I would love to support anyone. I love to build practice programs. I love to educate people in this. So I'm more than happy to share whatever we think's fit, whatever we think's best.
Awesome. Speaking of that, you said passing information that you learned. Who are some of the people that you learned the most from?
Oh man, so Stuart Morgan, controversial, but probably the best golf coach in the world.
And
in my belief.
Stuart was at the IJGA for a while, wasn't he?
Yeah, it was a phenomenal experience. That was an acceleration of my learning. I'd not really met many people that read more than me and that were obsessed with this more than me until I met him. And then I just sort of gave up the battle. Like, I'm never going to outwork him on learning and reading. And, he left IJGA and he started working with Bernd Wiesberger after Bernd Wiesberger was injured. Bernd was 300 in the world. He's now like 21 in the world. Won a few times, came second on the European Tour Order of Merit last year. And success is no accident when it comes to Stu. Just if you can get him on the podcast, he knows your bro obviously very well.
Yeah, and we tried to connect when he was here, and then he did speak at a local PGA meeting, and then he and I tried to connect a couple times, and then he was in the process of moving and leaving, and we just never could do that.
He's doing, I guess, what I'm doing, but he's doing it at the elite level, and he's doing it just deeper, just deeper and more research. And he's also director of the Swiss PGA performance team or whatever it is. And I mean, any player that goes to, it's just an amazing experience. So Stuart Morgan was really just phenomenal. Prior to that, Zach Parker was fantastic. When I first got to the States, he's now in charge of the Ledbetter Junior Golf Academy with Chema Sanchez, who's in charge of the whole academy. But Stuart and Zach were just fantastic people as well, good friends of mine now. And then away from golf, I've always read things about Sean Foley, and I like how Sean Foley talks. I've never met him. I like how he talks and how he conducts himself. Find him very, very interesting. And then outside of golf, professors, Dr. Anders Ericsson at Florida State, he wrote a phenomenal book called Peak. And Tim Lee, McMaster University, expert in motor learning. And then Dr. Fran Pirizzolo helped me for a while, guided me, taught me some stuff. Dr. Robert Neal, he's a biomechanist by trade, but actually his understanding of sports psychology and just his knowledge is great. Dr. David Gressick, guy back in the UK. Mark Pearson, who's a coach in the UK. Again, very similar impact on me and my career that Zach had. He was the first person to introduce me to stats, and he was the first person to introduce me to course management and strokes gained. He was actually also the first person to introduce me really to like the business side of golf. So I learned a ton from him, and he was the first person to give me a few tour players to work with because he worked with tour players at the time. So I guess there's been a range of golf coaches and a range of professors that have really helped me. Matthew Cook, obviously, was the first person I coached with, and his drive, and me and him started game like training together. He's no longer part of it. He still supports me a lot and does a lot of things, but his drive to learn and get better and be the best he can be was amazing. And it was actually Zach who brought me and him to Florida. And then I think away from that, I like people like I like motivational stories. So I read a lot about John Wooden. Obviously never met him, but I have like mentors, I guess, that I've never met. I love a guy called Inky Johnson. I read a lot about Inky Johnson and think of his life story. And yeah, just motivational, inspirational stories that I try and connect with on a daily basis. But the main people would be all those people that I've said there. And actually, my dad was a phenomenal rugby coach who saw the game a little differently, who had slightly different beliefs and played at a good level and coached at a very good level, collegiate and England sort of level. So I think a lot of my coaching philosophy and my ability to try and see things a little differently and be a bit more fluid and a bit more free than a lot of coaching styles was born into me from my dad being a rugby coach, a very innovative one from an early age.
Well, I think that's huge because, if you follow the norm, like Einstein, theory of relativity, he was basically chastised when he brought that forth at first. And if he would have never went outside of the so-called science of the day, that would have never come about, right?
Yeah.
And then I remember I was fascinated by the ESPN 30 for 30 when they had the history of the Russian hockey team. I don't know if you had a chance to see that.
Yeah.
Right? So that coach, the thing that sticks out to me the most about that was how he told the higher-ups in Russian government that he needs to come to the U.S. and Canada to learn more about how to coach hockey. And they said, well, no, you're not going, because how are you going to beat them if you just do what they do? And here's a guy who basically knew nothing about hockey, but then he started incorporating dance choreography and all these. They basically developed their own process, and they became the machine. Nobody could beat them.
It's funny you say that. A lot of my most recent work in golf, the golf range challenges or the golf outs, as I call them, is modeled off CrossFit. Because in CrossFit, you learn all these crazy movements. You learn to skip, but you jump over the rope. The rope passes under you twice for every one jump. You learn to do pull-ups, but actually you learn to do a muscle-up where you do a pull-up and then you get above the bar. And you do push-ups, but you do them in a handstand position against the wall. Mm-hmm. So when I first go to CrossFit, I'm like, I can't do any of them. You can ask your brother. I was a little chunky when I was at IJGA. So too many nice bars on Hilton Head. So I can't do any of these movements. Not once did I learn these movements in a blocked fashion or in isolation. I only learned to do these movements in the context of doing a workout of the day. Always against the clock, always against other people, always spacing variability and challenge. And guess what? I can do every single one of those movements. And there's no genetic gift. See, I'm 38. I'm over that peak now. I'm going the other way, right?
You're on my side of the
I'm
slope.
going the other way. I'm going the other way. Now, never once did they pull me out the class and say, just go into that corner and just practice your skipping. Never once did they pull me out the class and say, just go practice your muscle ups. It was all, they would come in the middle of the chaos of a workout and say, hey, what do you think you should do with your grip? If you're pulling on the bar, would it be more effective to have your hands wide or narrow? And I'd be like, oh, actually, narrow is more effective. Yeah, just next time you come to this station, just narrow your arms, do everything the same. Boom, muscle up. And it's like, I'm learning it in the chaos. So what actually happens is I retain the movements because there's so much going on in my mind that I'm now like when I'm in the stress of competing or when I'm fatigued, I can still do these movements. But if I'd only ever learned them in a reductionistic, blocked environment, the chances of me accessing them in the chaos of a workout are limited. And I tell you the craziest experience I had with this. I'd just learned to do a bar muscle up, and I went to another gym and I couldn't do it. And what was different? It was just another gym. And it took me 5 or 10 minutes of attempting to actually get it. And nothing had changed. It's still a bar, right? The change to that environment is so small, but it wasn't the bar that I was used to. So whether it was a psychological thing or a sensory perceptual thing, I don't know. But what I do know is I got it in that other environment. And once I got it in that second environment, everywhere else now, it's relatively straightforward. But I never learned any of those skills in a blocked fashion. So some of these golf range challenges that I've built, you go against the clock. It's like you've got to get as many points as you can in 20 minutes. So the clock's counting down, and every time you miss, you get a 30-second time penalty. Or if you hold a putt, you then hit an iron, and then you hit a drive. And it's really modeled on the sport of CrossFit, because I know that there is retention and transfer of skill in CrossFit. One, because of the science that I know of learning, the science of learning and the science of human performance. But number two, because I've also experienced it.
Yeah, the adaptability and using other industries to improve yours is.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, it's so important. It's so important. So that goes back to what you were saying about the analogy that you gave. I just believe that's so important. I think we could learn so much from John Wooden. Golf coaches could learn so much from John Wooden, mm-hmm. and put that into their coaching. Arsene Wenger, who was a soccer manager for Arsenal, revolutionized soccer. Everything was done to time on a slightly smaller pitch. And training was very demanding. You had to adapt very, very quick feet and very, very good touch and skill to survive in Arsene Wenger's training. And then Arsenal became one of the best passing teams ever. Pep Guardiola then furthered that at Barcelona. I just thought of another example. It slipped my mind. But yeah, I actually went and watched Arsenal train a few times when I was building my golf coaching philosophy. And it helped me a lot. You can see spacing, variability, and challenge in the way that Arsene Wenger used to train Arsenal when players like Thierry Henry and people like that were there. So there's a lot that we can learn from other sports to transfer into golf coaching. 100%.
Was there anything when you were learning from all these people and reading and studying and meeting with that absolutely blew you away, or was there anything that you were sure of when you got started that later on you realized that it was completely wrong?
The thing that blew me away was how the professors were so generous with their time. Only cost $40,000 a year to go to Florida State University. Mm-hmm. Dr. Anders Ericsson is maybe the most published guy alive on human performance right now. And he was like, "Oh, you coach a different sport and you've read all my books? Yeah, come on, let's talk." And I was like, "What, really?" That was what blew me away. And then I think the one thing was when I first started this, it was like, "Oh, look, focus on the target and external focus. All of these studies say it's better, so I'm going to get my players to focus on the target." That was not what I should do. I should still treat the player as an individual, and I should be not evidence-based, where everything I do is based in evidence. I shouldn't be that way. I should be evidence-led. So I should always have the research and the philosophy in the back of my mind. But deep down, I should always know, well, they're telling me they're not focused on the target. They're telling me they're focused on pressure going into the floor on the left foot. But man, these quality of shots look amazing. The ball strike looks great. Maybe I should just roll with it. You know, at a time I had a bit of a conflict with the focus band. I really wanted to know what it was measuring. And I wasn't sure that for $500 you could be changing someone's neural pathways. Mm-hmm. So I asked a lot of questions about that. And I was like, is there enough evidence for me to use it? Isn't there? And then I didn't really use it for a while. And then I had this student that really got sort of in their own way. And I was like, I'm just going to put the focus band on them, and just even that beeping noise is going to take their mind off whatever it is that the excessive cognition, the paralysis by analysis. So I'm just gonna use it. This kid, it was phenomenal what happened. And then I was like, right, I don't care about the science and research in this instance. I care about this kid, and this is working. So I think that was one thing that I got wrong, was I felt like I could create this perfect system. And then I realized, no, I don't want to do that. I want to create a framework that then people can be fluid within. And I also started to understand, I did a lot of talking out loud. I get players to play, talking their routine out loud, telling me where their focus was all the time, talking it out loud. And that really made me understand that a lot of the time what people would say they're thinking or focusing on, they just weren't. So, you know, again, it's an art of coaching. It's understanding that every human's different, and that information isn't always accurate, and so on and so forth. That can only really come, I guess, with experience.
Yeah, I would agree 100%. We could sit here and talk for hours and hours, and I know you've got some other things to do probably. You want to do some rapid fire and then wrap this thing up?
Yeah, let's go. My phone's actually running out of battery. That's my biggest concern.
Let me get it in, and you got to come back and do it again.
Yeah, okay, we'll do.
All right, so let's say you're in the Ryder Cup. You're playing. They've started playing the music real loud now. What would be your walk-up song?
Oh, probably, the Top Gun theme tune, the one with the electric guitar when they're taking either, I can't remember if they're landing or when they're going out for that final battle, that real, like, electric guitar jam that's in Top Gun. That would be it for sure.
All right. Biggest pet peeve?
Biggest pet peeve. In some ways, I don't know. I think people getting overstressed about things that aren't really, significant. I read a book, and it said there was a lot of solace to be gathered in realizing how insignificant our contribution is to the world. And I thought about it, and I was like, yeah, in the grand scheme of things, Einstein, Martin Luther King, the suffragettes, they've all done great. It's kind of what I'm doing is kind of small. So where my pet peeve is when people like, hey man, the left wrist has to be here and I'm right, and this is going to revolutionize. Well, kind of insignificant to me. So, it just that, I guess, people, if that's a good answer.
Especially in today's world.
The social media modern world, it's even worse.
Dream foursome.
Oh man, I would go for sure with Tiger Woods, and then I would go with Inky Johnson. I don't know if Inky Johnson plays golf, and they alive or
whoever you want, anyone in history.
I think Martin Luther King would be a great one. I'd like to have conversations with him, but I don't know if he plays golf. I don't know if Inky Johnson plays golf either. So let me go with Tiger, Let me go with Tiger, John Wooden, and Martin Luther King. There you
All
go.
right. That'd be a hell of an interesting grouping right there.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah.
Best course you ever played?
Oh, St Andrews Old Course. Not because it's the best course I've ever played, but I got goosebumps now. When you are there and you walk around there, it's like it's not real.
Mm-hmm.
And the ghosts of golf. I watched Tiger win the Open there. It was crazy. I've played there a couple of times. My mum's Scottish. I have a US girlfriend, and I took her there, and we had a drink at I think it's called the Jigger Inn, and just eating fish and chips just off the seaside there, just everything about that place. And then also hitting high bomb draw over 17, which I actually managed to do, and making double when I hit it against the wall was also a very memorable experience. So that's my favorite. Yeah.
Probably your favorite double of all time.
Oh yeah, it was so the driver 4-iron it was so pure, but my short game was a little exposed.
Let's see, biggest celebrity crush.
Oh man. Who would that be? I would say from back in the day, Angelina Jolie and Gone in 60 Seconds is a pretty solid one for me.
That's pretty good.
Yeah, she's got a bit of a rebel side, and in Salt, I think she's in Salt as well. So I would say her. Yeah, Angelina Jolie for sure.
Let's a couple more. Where would you go if you were invincible? Or I'm sorry, invisible, not invincible.
Where would I go? I mean, the first thing that sprung to my mind was the Masters, because never had any success getting in there or working with players that have qualified for that. So the Masters, but I think I would really like to see what Donald Trump's like. So I would want to go into that White House, and I would want to be able to answer, is this guy playing a game? Is he as crazy as what some people think? Or is he actually a genius?
Mm-hmm.
How does this guy speak to people behind closed doors? How did he do The Apprentice, be in WWE wrestling, and then become freaking president of the biggest country in the world? And then, be responsible for these debates and arguments? I just want to... The guy is fascinating. So I would like to go in the White House and snoop around and just see what he's like, just for my own personal, just to be able to answer questions about it.
That's an interesting answer, and that's one I never thought of. But that would be very interesting.
Yeah.
Two more. Your favorite era in golf. So and I'll give you a selection. So you got the Jones-Hagen era, the Hogan, Nelson, Snead, the Nicholas, Watson, Trevino, the Faldo, Ballesteros, and Sandy Lyle, Tiger, Phil era, or the modern Spieth, Koepka, and DJ.
I like the Tiger, Phil era. That was my era, right? So when I'm 17 years old or 16 years old, so 1997, 15 years old when Tiger won the Masters, had that poster on my wall. I supported Tiger as an amateur. And everyone was talking about him in England when he was an amateur, and he was this golfer who was wearing Nike stuff. And, there's no doubt in my mind I would not be doing this job with the moderate success or with the revenue that it creates if Tiger Woods had never been in this sport. He revolutionized the game. And then he also, racism wasn't too far away past then, and debatably might not have been from... I don't think he was allowed to play some courses when he was younger because of the color of his skin. So he didn't necessarily revolutionize a game. He was revolutionizing the world, and we were watching this happen. So I just love that. And I love the fact that there's Spieth, DJ, and Koepka and all of them now, and Tiger's still in there with them. It's just the best. So that would be my era. Anything with Tiger in.
Cool. And then the last one, and I think you're about the 22nd episode I've done. This one has been split about 50-50. Greatest of all time, Jack or Tiger?
Tiger.
You can make arguments for both, and there have been.
I think though, like and this is a controversial one, because if you go Jordan or LeBron, I'm gonna say LeBron, just because you can't compare era to era. Jack can't necessarily do what these guys are doing now. Now, if Jack was in this era, how would he fare? That's a better question for me. Rather than compare the two, who's the best, I feel like, hey, if Jack was in this era, what would it look like? How would he be? That's the exciting question for me, because what they're doing now, like Brooks Koepka, if you put Brooks Koepka against all of those guys, Jack and Trevino and whatever, he's just going to dominate if you pick him up and drop him in there, because the world's advanced. Mm-hmm. We all evolve. We all grow. The sports science, the technology, everything that these guys have, they're just playing a different game to what they were playing. Tiger Woods is playing a different game. He's even come out and said that. So when you talk the greatest of all time, if you take the fact that they're bound to be greater in this age, because the pool that they're playing in is greater, because we've all evolved. So that's the side that I take, just based on human performance and human learning. Tiger is the best of all time, because you really struggle to compare era versus era. Does that make sense? I don't know if I've done that.
Absolutely. It's a very good explanation.
Yeah, so that's where the LeBron Jordan one will get some serious hate, but I'm just trying to justify that.
Well, it might change. I think a lot of people's mind changed after watching The Last Dance, and I'm not going to give you any spoilers, but when you'll see what everyone's talking about once you see that, and it goes to your area of what you're a professional at and your expertise at, and that's the mental side.
Yeah, I would say like Jack paved the way for Tiger in a lot of respects. Mm-hmm. If Jack only wins 13 majors, what's Tiger doing right now? Without Jordan, is LeBron the same player today without Jordan paving that pathway? Probably not. So we're all evolving, right? We're all going at different rates. I actually, the guy who played for the Atlanta Falcons and the Atlanta Braves, that's like an athlete. I can't remember. Deion Sanders,
Deion Sanders, yeah.
Well, when people are talking about greats and talking about Jordan, why does no one ever mention Deion Sanders? Because to me, you gotta. Oh, sorry guys, I can't play in the Super Bowl because I gotta go and play in the World Series. Well, what the heck?
It's a good dilemma to have.
I watched that documentary and I was like, how has no one ever told me this? So I love these debates. But again, for me, I'm not trying to be right or wrong when I say this. I'm just trying to get people to think, or trying to give explanations to things. I just think I really don't care. I think all of them are magical, and I think when you get to witness greatness, Andrew Rice often talks about Lionel Messi. I agree with that. You just have to sit back and say, wow, what are these people doing? How are they achieving this? Let's enjoy and let's try and learn.
That's some good stuff. As always, Iain, you've always got great stuff. I enjoy talking to you. I wish we could do it more. I enjoy listening to your talks and lectures and YouTube and all the stuff you've got going on. If someone else wanted to learn more from you, schedule time for sessions, have you do seminars, guest speaker, they want to take your certified GLT classes, what's the best way to reach you, and what's your social media handles?
I honestly think the best way to reach me is if you go to iainhighfield.com.
Okay.
So IAIN, Iain, that's spelled the Scottish way, IAIN, Iain.Highfield, iainhighfield.com. or you can email me at Iain@IainHighfield.com. They're the best two ways. And on my website, IainHighfield.com, there's a calendar. You can just book a free 30-minute call, or you can email me, Iain@IainHighfield.com, and just request a free 30-minute call. And I'll jump on the phone with anyone that reaches out. And then the other two good resources that are on the go would be Instagram and YouTube. So Instagram is Game L Training, and YouTube is Game Like Training. And then my podcast is Beyond the Mind. And we're not necessarily golf on Beyond the Mind. We're trying to create positive change. Everything that I've learned in golf, we're trying to apply into life and just take more action, be more practical in the way that we go about our lives to try and create positive change.
That's awesome. Always doing good stuff.
Awesome, dude. I really appreciate you having me on.
Anytime.
You know, I'm actually in Hilton Head this weekend.
Oh, you get a break, let me know. Beers on me.
I will do. Yeah, I will do. Probably the best night for me will be Saturday evening. So I'll drop you a text.
Wonderful.
I'll drop you a text.
You have a great night, buddy.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. Good luck with the podcast and future shows.
Awesome. Thank you.
Take care, man.
All right, everybody. Thank you so much for listening to today's show. If you enjoyed it, you can find more information on today's episode and other topics at golf360.blog. There you'll find the show notes and links related to this episode, as well as any other episode that we've done so far to date. If you're interested in improving your game and would like to learn more from yours truly by taking a private lesson, a half-day or multi-day school, club or putter fitting, you can reach me through the blog site or by email, pete@golf360.blog. So some of you may be asking, what is the golf paradigm? All you have to do is click on the homepage while on my blog site to discover how you can start playing better than you ever thought possible. Or you can simply sign up, again, on the blog page for my instructional videos where I give regular tips on all areas of the game to include the swing, club design and fitting, health, fitness and nutrition, the mental aspects, and equally as important, the integration of all those things together. I'm also on social media, and you can find me at The Golf Paradigm. That's Paradigm, and I'm on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. And don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel, also under the same name, The Golf Paradigm. Facebook is usually the best way to reach me for questions and or comments, and I look forward to hearing what all of you have to say.